I just really want to serve people well. Like when you go to buy a house, it's not my job to tell you to buy it or not buy it. It's not my job to tell you if it's a good house or a bad house. It's my job to observe and report so that you have an understanding of what your purchase is.
You're trying to make $1,000 a month. Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Abercrombie and Flipped Real Estate Podcast, where we dive into all things real estate. Today's episode is incredibly insightful. I've had the privilege of sitting down with Jeremy Heffner, the owner of Heffner Home Inspections based in Waco, Texas. What's fascinating about Jeremy's story is that in just a few short years, he's become one of the top home inspectors in all of Waco. And he started his career as a women's basketball strength trainer for the Baylor Bears under the legendary Kim Mulkey. This episode is both inspiring for anyone considering a career change, and it's packed with incredible insight on the process of home inspections during your real estate process. Jeremy also shares what you should specifically look for when you're buying a house. And guys, if you find value in today's episode, please like and subscribe. I really would appreciate the support as I try to grow this channel. Anyways, let's hop in. You're trying to make $1,000 a month. So how did you get into this? Because talk a little bit about what you used to do, because you were in athletics.
Yes. So I was in athletics. I coached at the collegiate level for 20 years exactly. I was a strength conditioning coach. I spent my last 13 years at Baylor with women's basketball. And then prior to that, I was at University of Georgia for 5 years. And then prior to that, I was at University of Texas for 2.
You're doing strength training.
Strength conditioning.
So that's how Thomas and you.
Yeah. So Thomas was a student intern, I guess, for us originally, then became a GA, then became an interim strength coach, then, now he's obviously full-time strength coach with LSU and Coach Mulkey. So
top in the country.
Yeah, he's a national champion.
Champion.
He was the interim strength coach when they won in 2019 here at Baylor too.
That's right. Were you here in 19?
No, I left for 2 years. I left from 17 to 19.
Okay.
And I came back in 19, at the end of 19, but after the season.
Okay. Cool.
So Thomas was the strength coach.
How long were you at Baylor for?
13 years, yeah.
Wow. So
I took a 2-year break and went to Tyler Legacy High School.
Yeah. Yep.
We went out there. It was my wife had just finished her master's degree in counseling. We had just had our daughter. We didn't. She did, but I was along for the ride. Yeah. And so we just basketball. My wife was at that time the assistant to the head football coach, which was Coach Briles, then Coach Grobe, then oh my goodness, I'm blanking. Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Yeah, Matt Rule.
Coach Rule.
Yeah.
Man, I'm sorry about that.
Embarrassed.
Yeah. But so she was the assistant for all 3 of those coaches. Ushered them in. So do you remember the turmoil as Coach Briles left?
Yep.
And then there was even turmoil as Coach Rule came in.
Right.
On all aspects. And so she was the point person for all of that, the media and everything, being the assistant to the head coach at that time.
Wow.
While finishing a master's degree, while having a child, while I was working for Coach Mulkey, which you and Thomas both know that can be a difficult job at times. A rewarding and great, grateful for all the success I was able to experience because of her. But it's a hard job.
Right.
Anyway, we had our daughter, and we had just talked. When we got married and we decided to have kids, we knew that we were not going to be. We couldn't be good parents and both be in athletics, and so there was a need for a change. We got offered. We both got offered jobs at Tyler Legacy. Her first job as a high school counselor, and then I got the head strength coach. The head strength coach for the high school. So we went there for 2 years. We really enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great community. Great high school. Great people. Just all the way around. Great kids. Unbelievable kids. But we missed Waco. We felt like that was our home, and Kim and I had maintained a relationship. Like when we left, there was no
bad blood.
No bad blood. She knew why we were leaving. We had to gather our bearings. We wanted to be parents first, and then employees second. So we got to do that in Tyler. We felt really good about coming back. Kim offered us an opportunity to come back, and when I say us, I mean us.
Yeah.
When I came in for my interview the second time around, she was like, you better bring Carly and Chandler, that's my wife and daughter, and they better be in on this interview because you know, it's a family deal. Like,
it's a dual
you got to be
decision.
all in if you're going to do that type of job. So we all came and, you know, stayed there. And then when they left for LSU, we were committed to Waco. And so we stayed, and Coach Collin hired me on when she got here. I stayed with her for 2 years, and we're still very close with them. In fact, we went and saw them beat number 23 Utah State on Tuesday night. Got to sit in the coaches' seats. My daughter thinks if we ever go to a game and we're not like 3 rows off the court, my daughter's like, "What are we even doing at the game?"
Sports
like,
fans.
I want to be on the screen every time I come here. So. So they allow us to spoil her still a little bit. We got a great dub, and it's a good team, and they've been playing well lately. So
that's how it was with my dad growing up. It's hard to go to a game and sit in the stands. It's a normal experience. I just can't. When you're used to just being, you are spoiled. I mean, and it's a good thing. We're so spoiled. We went and saw Caitlin Clark play. You know, when they were here playing the Wings. And but we're so spoiled, like we have so many Baylor players in the WNBA. We got tickets to the WNBA to see Caitlin Clark, and we sat next to Caitlin Clark's parents. You know what I mean? Wow.
So like that's how spoiled my daughter is. At 9, she knows nothing. She's like, she loves what I do now. She loves the freedom that I have to be with her, go to lunch and stuff like that at school. But she's like, man, I miss the basketball girls. Like I was like their little sister, and now I hardly ever even get to see them. So she's like torn between having me at home and getting to be a celebrity with the basketball girls, you know. She's 9 now? Yeah. So when she starts dating, I feel bad for the guy because the experience he's going to have to deliver with sports. It's like for sure. Yeah. I tell my sister that all the time. I'm like, I feel bad for whoever you end up dating. Yeah. But all right, so how did you – okay, so I talked to a lot of people in real estate who they kind of go the – you either have people end up becoming real estate professionals from an agent standpoint, investors, lending, you've got title. So home inspecting is a category that, like when Thomas reached out and said, we need to talk, I said, that's such an interesting subject because I don't often speak to home inspectors like this. I know there's a ton I'm going to learn, but how did you say that's the field that I'm going to leave my job in Baylor athletics for, and that's when I'm going to start and go all in on it? Yeah. Okay. So the motivating factor was my family. Like I just the way college athletics has changed. There is no downtime. There is no off time. It used to be back in the day, you know, in the off season, we could only do 8 hours a week, and you know the strength conditioning was 6 hours of that, and now it's 20 hours. Like, you know, maxed out all year long. You're recruiting the day. It used to be we would get 2 weeks off completely right after the season. Now on the way home, you're setting up recruiting schedules for that next day when you arrive after you lose in the tournament. You know what I mean? So just the landscape has changed. The demand for your time, energy is 24/7, and it's just really hard to be a family man. And that is my priority. And so that was the motivating factor. Why? So I was a strength conditioning coach. So like, it's in my blood. I love to move. I was given that God gifted me this body, and I believe in using it to the best of my ability. So like work, like the physical aspect of work doesn't scare me. In fact, if I sit around the house for a day or two, I start to feel ill. You know what I mean? So like I am kind of addicted and also just grateful to be able to move as well as I do. I'm 47, so like I feel good about it. You know, so. I didn't want to go to something where I was sitting down in front of a computer or just I wanted my body to be my tool. You know, so that was one reason. The other motivating factor is I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. As a coach, you're trying to guide these kids, you're trying to teach them about their brand, you're trying to teach them all this stuff, and it's like so I have a library of thousands of books that I've read. Relationships, development, you know, all that, Good to Great, you know, all of those books that we've all read because we want to better ourselves, and it's like you've been teaching this or preaching this for 20 years. Now let's see what you can do. You know what I mean? Like I read one of my favorite entrepreneur books is the E-Myth. Have you ever read that? So it just talks about, you know, you can be the entrepreneur, or you can be you can be the worker, the technician, but the best incorporate all of those things. They don't focus on one. They make sure that they give their energy to all aspects of the entrepreneurial, So anyway, it was a chance for me to kind of just test myself, like, can you do this? Can you start a business? Can you be a technician? Can you do the home inspections? Can you market yourself? Can you build relationships in the community? And that's the other thing. I will lend most of any success I've had in the first couple of years to the fact that I was with the best athletic program in the community for 13 years. So I met bank owners, not people that work at the bank, the owner of the bank,
right.
Being B association, all the people that we're getting to meet everybody that is anybody in the community. So I lend a lot of it to that. I was able to build relationships for a long time prior to getting in. But ultimately, my wife and I have flipped 3 houses and lived in them and sold them. We never had the intention of flipping a house to sell. It just happened that we moved here in 2010. And Waco has just skyrocketed in growth. And people we did a good job. We used Grant Goss Contracting, or Goss Contracting now, and Chris Goss is running it now, but a local. They've been in business for like 70, 80 years here in town. And anyway, so they got us into it, and we started, we flipped the house. Somebody offered us double what we paid for it. We sold it, So then we go and we did another one. And we did it with the intention, we built it for us to live in, raise our family in. But then, the same things happened. We moved to Tyler, flipped one, come back. The one we live in now we gutted, And so having done that, I got to go through the process 3 times, got to meet lots of people. And I'm just the kind of guy like my daughter thinks it's weird. My wife thinks it's weird. I didn't get married till I was 35. We didn't have my daughter till I was 38. Every girlfriend I've ever had in my life from 16 to 35, I'm still friends with. And not in any nefarious way. It's just like they impacted my life in some way, and I'm grateful for that. So I don't want to kill that relationship for no reason. I've met their husbands, I've met their kids. It's all good. But so that's just, I've been blessed to have that kind of mindset coming up through this and trying to teach athletes that. One of the books I used to give younger people was Never Eat Alone. And it just talks about use meals to build relationships, and you don't know how that's going to benefit you in the long term. And at the very least, you had a good meal with somebody. You know what I mean? So so that was something. That was one of the first books I ever read when I got into self-help as a young coach. So anyway, all of that set me up to do this. So the last year I was at Baylor, I got up at 4:00 every morning, and from 4 to 6 a.m. I'd spend 2 hours on the computer doing my coursework, coursework. And then towards the end of the year, after the actual NCAA tournament, I took 2 weeks off and I went down and did all my in-person stuff, ride-alongs and stuff like that. So by the time I had resigned. Coach Collin knew about all this long-term because I wanted to set her up for success, which they've got a great new strength coach there. But anyway, so I was kind of planning, and in that year going into it, I knew what I was doing. So I was meeting anybody that I knew in the community that knew an agent or knew a lender or knew anybody that had any connection with a builder, a contractor, HVAC. I was meeting and greeting. I was handing out business cards before I had a business, So so I just was trying to network, and I was 45 when I changed careers, and I didn't want to go into the career and say, well, hey, I'm the new guy. No, I needed to. My goal was, it wasn't money, it wasn't revenue, it wasn't inspections. It was at my 2-year mark, I want to have the experience of a 5-year veteran. At my 5-year mark, I want to have the experience of a 10-year veteran. And at my 10-year mark, I want to be a multi-inspector firm, and I want to have the experience of a 20-year veteran. And you don't do that. So first of all, I've got to do the inspections. Okay, that's the job. But meeting experts in the field, I've got a Rolodex of HVAC, electricians, plumbers, that when I get stumped, rather than looking something up or getting on Chat GPT, I'm calling a plumber who's been doing it for 40 years, and he's like, oh man, this is what it is, this is how this works. And I'm just I'm getting literally a 6-month education in a 5-minute phone call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm on site looking at it. You know what I mean? So I really put a lot of effort into that before starting the business, because I was going all in. I was betting the farm literally on it. We're not a wealthy family. We didn't. I'm the first person to ever graduate from college, and all of my family. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like we came from money, and we took a chance. And yeah, my wife was all in. My daughter rocks Heffner home inspections at school almost every day. So
well, you've been able to build. I mean, I was telling you this offline, but we shoot multiple episodes in a row for these, even though the guests see them once a week. The guest I had on before here was talking about a home that his parents had purchased, and I said, "Who are you using?" He said, "Your name."
Yeah.
So you've been able to build your brand, and I think what's inspiring is you changed your career at 45, and so to people listening or people out there that have that desire, but they're just scared to make that jump, you're proof you can do it and grow a business. It doesn't matter what age you
I
are.
hope so. I mean, I'm in process. I've got a long way to go, I think. But
I don't think it's a coincidence that happened before.
No,
You just happen to be the person.
It's a blessing. And I can't say enough about why we chose Waco. The people, the community. You know this community well. You grew up here. I know 20 people that know you. Like I said, your mom and my wife worked together.
Right,
I worked with
right.
your dad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's just the Waco community. And dude, people have just bent over backwards to help me, grow my business. From inviting me to Freddie Kish's Arto Center grand opening last year, where I met 20 realtors. Why would you invite a home inspector? No reason other than I'm their friend, and they're like, man, there's going to be a lot of people here that you need to meet. Just little things like that where people just went out of their way. Peter Tin is a lender here in town, just a great guy. He's gone out of his way to make sure that anything he does in real estate, I'm involved in.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of good people supporting me and helping me grow the business.
No, and you, for that many people to want to support, you're doing something right too. But what made you say home inspections? That's what I wanted. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because it's such a niche in the real estate world.
It is. I mean, I just saw an opening. You know what I mean? It just seemed like that I could, if I became a real estate agent, there are I think 1,300 real estate agents in town.
Yeah, just in Waco.
Yeah,
I have 13 in my one brokerage in Dallas.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that number's around 1,300. There may be more now in Waco, serving the same community. I mean, there may be 30 home inspectors. You know what I mean? So I saw opportunity. I also felt like it was kind of my wheelhouse, with doing the flipping and having a little bit of an understanding. I thought there was opportunity for me to have at least enough experience to where I wasn't completely going in blind. You know what I mean? So that was part of it. And then, like I said, the other thing is I like to move my body. I don't get up in the morning and be like, oh, I got to go inspect a house. No, it's like, I got my music on. Yeah. I'm jamming. I'm checking everything out. I feel like I'm serving someone. I want to serve the client. My biggest nightmare, and it's happened before. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and forget that I didn't mark something on an inspection. I took the picture, I noted it, and I didn't put it in the report, and it freaks me out. I will wake up in a panic. So I used to bartend a long time ago, before I got into coaching when I went through college, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I didn't make that guy his drink.
I know that feeling because I waited tables.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You weren't writing it down. You took all the drinks, and you brought everybody but the Dr. Pepper in the corner. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, you remember that. You're like, oh, my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. Funny. Yeah, and so it's the same concept. I'll wake up, but my point in saying that is I just really want to serve people well. When you go to buy a house, it's not my job to tell you to buy it or not buy it. It's not my job to tell you if it's a good house or a bad house. It's my job to observe and report so that you have an understanding of what your purchase is. I can't assume the risk for you. As an agent, you can't assume the risk for it. It is your decision, but we're going to help you make the most informed decision possible. Right? And so that's my job. And so I like that because it's a chance. You want to go to work and feel good about yourself. It's a chance to honor my customer every time I go in there. So I'm busting my butt every single day. And that doesn't mean, like we talked about, I have an inspection today. It's a newer build. It's going to be what I would determine to be an easy inspection. And easy for me is like I'm not getting under a house because there's no crawl space, it's a slab on grade. And so that's what I mean. It's like it's easier. There's not going to be as many defects, It's not going to be a 5-hour inspection. It's probably going to be a 2.5-hour inspection and a 30-minute client walkthrough, you know what I mean? 3 hours in and out, and you get to feel good about it, and you get to serve a client, And if there is something minor wrong, I get to let them know. And it's like, all you need, everything's fixable,
Right.
But you would rather know before you purchase a $350,000 house that you're gonna have to drop $5,000 on something than after.
Yep.
I mean, that's devastating, So yeah, just trying to serve people and inform them, and yeah.
So were you handy at all prior, or was all of this taught to you through the training?
Yes. Am I handy? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can do things. I'm not afraid to do things. I like to learn things and thank the Lord for YouTube, because if I don't know how to do it, I can
Right.
figure it out pretty easily watching some videos. So yeah, I did have a little bit of an inclination for that. But most of that, to be honest, has been self-taught. I didn't grow up in that kind of system, where my dad was teaching me how to do this stuff all the time. My dad and I have a great relationship. That just wasn't his MO. Now, he taught me how to play baseball, football, and basketball, but we weren't working on cars together or, changing
Right.
out electrical panels. Those are not things that we did together.
Yeah.
And the irony of that is my grandfather was an electrician, so my dad did know how to do it. We
Interesting.
just didn't do it together.
It's in your blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm curious on, there's so much information you have to know from an inspection report. One of the hardest parts about, not hardest, but one of the parts about obviously what I do as a real estate professional is walking people through that inspection report, helping them make an educated decision. There's so much information on it. It looks, but what, in your opinion, are the things that you really need if you're looking to buy a house? And I don't even know if you're supposed to say this stuff, but because I know there's some things you can and can't say. Maybe I'm wrong on that. The inspection rules and stuff. Maybe that's just to the client. But what are the things that, you, in your opinion, stay away from when you're purchasing a house?
Stay away from. Well, the biggest thing, initially right off the bat, you got to have a solid foundation. Everything else is going to fail if that fails. There's just, period.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a slab on grade and it's a bad foundation, that can be a very, very expensive deal. You know what I mean? If it's a crawl space, that's quite a bit less expensive because you have access to underneath the house and they can make adjustments. They're not digging in the ground,
right.
Putting in piers and things like that. So the foundation needs to be solid. And I think any reasonably decent home inspector is going to note that right away. You know what I mean? They're going to so things you want to look at as a homeowner or as an agent are these doors opening and closing? That's your exterior doors that are load bearing walls. Are the frames going to be crooked so that if that's a case, guaranteed unless they just built the house wonky,
there's
going to be some movement going on. So that's a big one. It could be seasonal. Our house in Tyler that we bought, it was on the side of a hill, and so so that's another thing. We'll get to that in a second. But So anyway, foundation. But look for the doors and windows. If they don't open, and one of the things is, like in an old home with the crawl space, the windows aren't going to open if they're wood windows because they've been painted 13 times. The weighted ropes are broken, so they're not going to open. So windows may not be a good indicator at that point.
Yeah.
But from the exterior, if you see gaps in the framing, from the framing and the siding, then maybe there has been some movement. Now the windows aren't moving. Okay, maybe it's foundation and not paint. And then look at the doors, the exterior doors. Are they opening and closing smoothly? And if they're not, well, there may be an indication that there's movement, right? So let's say we got to make sure the foundation is stable. But then the second biggest thing for me is moisture intrusion. You never want water in your house, because there's just no benefit to it. It's all downhill from there. So roof's got to be good. Right? And not just the roof. Maybe the roof's good, but they didn't flash it properly around the chimney, or the vents aren't flashed properly, or you have a sidewall that runs into the roof covering that doesn't have any flashing on it, and there's just water. Eventually, water's going to get in the house, And when water gets in the house, obviously it can decrease the structural integrity. But moisture and humidity, mold, right? Like, so air quality. So you want to keep moisture out of the house. Got to have a good roof covering. You need everything sealed up around the house. There shouldn't be holes in the house. They need to be sealed, because even though you have a veneer, an exterior cladding protecting the house, once something gets in behind there, it has access to the house. So like, you want to seal up all the holes on the outside. And then that goes along with the house I was talking about in drainage, is drainage. Like, you want to make sure that water is draining away from the house. If you have a crawl space, you don't want moisture under the house, And if there is moisture, do you have good ventilation in that crawl space so that it can dry out? Because you're not going to keep moisture out of a crawl space. You're just not.
Right.
Unless you have the perfect grade, which very few people build houses with crawl spaces now and do the proper grading, right? Like, it's just going to be a slab on grade, and everything's going to be 6 inches at 10 feet, sloping away from the house, right? But the older ones, they didn't do that, So, and I live over in Woodway. I mean, you've got the rolling hills and everything. Drainage is going to be an issue. So make sure your drainage. If I can tell you a quick story. We lived in Tyler, the house we bought. We're second house from the bottom of the hill. Well, at the time, my brother, he was doing dirt work. So him and his buddy, his foreman, came out from Waco to Tyler to look at my house, because we lived on the side of a hill. It was a beautiful house, but we wanted to fill in the backyard, maybe create a retaining wall so that we could put a platform so that my daughter could have this big playground set that we now have at our house.
Because it's sloping down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Chris, a little bit of a redneck, comes over and he looks at me. I said, "Well, Chris, are we allowed to cuss on here?"
Yeah, oh yeah.
He said, "Well, Chris," or I said, "Chris, what do you think?" He said, "Well, Jeremy, I guess I'd move to the top of the fucking hill." I was like, we already bought the house, Chris. Like, we're living here now. We don't have money to buy or sell. Like, what do we do? And he just said, "Well, I'd sell this house and move to the top of the fucking hill." That's what he said. Wow. Because it was going to be like $15,000 of dirt work to build a retaining wall and all that. And we're like, "No, we're not doing that." You know what I mean? So anyway, I didn't do the story justice, but if you heard the way that the redneck spoke, it was glorious. Like, it was 5 words, and just crushed my whole soul with 5 words. You know what I mean? 5 very slow, drawn out words. Anyway, so
you weren't there long though. So
no. Drainage is a big issue, and you just want to make sure that's taken care of, because it can negatively affect the foundation. So keeping water out of the house, whether that be roof covering, making sure that the exterior's sealed up, or your drainage, that's a big one. And then your other components, your electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. Those are the ones that are going to cost you a lot of money. Again, if you're in a crawl space, so if you have a house before, let's say 1980, do you have cast iron drain lines? Right? Because those are going to rust out.
Just a matter of when.
Yeah, when. Now, if they are in a crawl space, you're going to have access to them, so then it becomes a much cheaper repair to replace. But if they're in a crawl space, they're most likely directly in contact with the soil, which is going to increase or shorten the time that it's going to take to deteriorate, right, from the inside and the outside. So then cast iron drain lines. And as a real estate agent, as a home inspector, if I see cast iron drain lines, I'm going to recommend a sewer scope by a plumber. Let's get in there and see what the inside looks like. So you can you're buying a $350,000 house. It's going to cost you $500 for an inspection. It's going to cost you $250 for a sewer scope. You know what I mean?
Right.
$750 all in for a house that's going to be the most expensive thing you ever buy in your life. You know what I mean? Like, I would, on the front end, I would do that just so you have as much information as possible. Yeah. The plumber may come back and say, "Hey, the pipes are good. You got another 30 years on these, He may come back and say, "Hey, man, these are about to rust out." And knowing that it's going to be a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 repair. Now, if it's slab on grade and it's cast iron, I'm going to be really adamant about getting a sewer scope, just because you're talking about getting into the foundation itself to replace the plumbing, and that's way more expensive than you can probably even fathom. You know what I mean?
And that's like 1980 before.
Because
now
it's PVC.
PVC.
PEX on the supply line, PVC on the drain lines.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so and even with PVC, if you have a lot of foundation movement, it can sever those pipes in the slab. So like those things, you know what I mean? So that might be where if I see a house and I rank it as, I have like 3 rankings for foundation: failure, moderate, and satisfactory. Satisfactory is 90% of them. They're good. There may be a little bit of movement, but they're not going to affect the structural integrity.
Right.
But if I have a moderate, or, well, if I have a failure, like I would walk away from the house personally. But if I have a moderate, it's like you might need to get these pipes, even though they're PVC. If there's been movement, you might need to get these pipes sewer scoped anyway, just because if it moves and severs one of those pipes, so. Okay, so plumbing, electric. Most of the electric that's anything done like not after 95 is going to be. I mean, you're going to have some code things, but it's going to be golden. It's going to be grounded. It's going to be all that. The older stuff. If you got knob and tube wiring, or you have a fuse box for your electrical panel, like those things are going to need to be upgraded, because if you ever go to sell the house, you may buy it right now, but in another 5-10 years, it's going to be so far removed from what the norm is. No one's going to buy that without an electrical upgrade. You know what I mean? So you just need to know that going in. It's going to run you $5,000 to replace that panel. Like, so just have that in your mind. Maybe you don't want to do it, but if you go to sell it, you're probably going to have to do it, or you're going to have to give money for it. So.
That to me has been the most common thing I've seen in inspections from old. I would just say in my total portfolio, the box, that's the reoccurring thing. Yeah, it's always out of date. It's always being recommended.
Yeah, well, and I mean they change the code every 2 or 3 years, I think.
Y'all have to say that stuff.
And so like, I mean, almost every house in Waco that's been built doesn't have an original grounding system, right? So you're not going to rewire the whole house. You know what I mean? You're not going to tear out all the walls unless you're doing a gut job, and then you may do that. But so like that's one that you just, we have to mark. But we also tell you that when the house was built, it was built the way it was supposed to be built. Mm-hmm. Code has changed since then, and so it's no longer up to code. If you upgrade, the city's going to require you to do all of these things. As it is now, it's as-built condition, and you're good to go, Unless there's a major safety hazard. If I see some charring in a panel, or there's charring at multiple receptacles where something's arced and caught on fire, well, then I'm going to not make a stink about it, but just like, this needs to be, an electrician needs to evaluate this. This is over my head.
Right.
So we need to get someone out here who can tell you exactly what's happening, right?
I have one of my Airbnbs is an A-frame up in Dallas on the lake, and the way the land is. Have you ever done an A-frame before? An inspection on one?
I have not done an A-frame inspection. No.
Different.
Yeah,
types.
For sure.
So the house, it slopes down, kind of like the house you're talking about. Starts high, and then so it was built on. There's a crawl space and stilts, but towards the front of the house, the crawl space might be a couple feet.
Yep. Towards
the back of the A-frame, and the A-frame's only 900 square feet. The crawl space is up to your.
Yeah, you can basically walk in it. Yeah.
The way the house was built is all the plumbing runs underneath the A-frame. So if there's ever any plumbing issues, it'll break, go into that crawl space, and it just drains out. And I mean, it's got that. What's that old kind of siding where it's got all the holes in it? Around the house, I forget the name of it, but I mean, it's probably a sheet this big.
Okay.
So there's so much air in the crawl space. Okay. So one of my concerns buying it was the mold with all the water underneath, because I mean, just when it rains, it goes underneath the house. Yeah. But the problem is that pipe is just laying up against the house. So when it gets cold, those pipes freeze every single year. Anytime it reaches under 32 degrees, they freeze. There's no insulation on them. So I got a call the other day from a neighbor. He actually didn't have my number. He messaged me on Airbnb. He said, "You're flooding my house." And so one of the pipes had burst during the freeze. Okay. It was running down the hill, and his house was at the bottom of the hill. Oh, so it was flooding his driveway.
Oh, no.
So it's just, man, it's a nightmare. It
is. Well, let me say this. Insulate those. Yeah. I mean, you can literally just take foam insulation. I mean, it's something that you and I can do. Slice it down like it looks like the pool noodles.
Right.
And you just wrap it around. And I mean, it's worth doing, especially since you have such easy access to the pipes. Yeah. Like that, I would insulate them. Yeah. ASAP, especially before this next week coming up.
Yeah, because I need to.
I'm assuming it's an Airbnb you said. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, you're not going to be able to get clients to keep water running the whole time. To keep the faucet drip going. No. So
does that actually work when you?
Yeah, I mean it does, because think about it. Anytime you have movement creates friction that's going to more heat. If that water's just sitting there stagnant and still, it's it's gonna freeze, right? But if you can keep it moving and running, then yeah, there's gonna be a lot less chance of your pipes freezing.
Yeah, that's what I need to do that. Well, now I need to go get it insulated. So you sold me. So okay, you were talking about, you said electrical, plumbing, foundation.
HVAC, for your big system components. Like your HVAC systems. So the exterior, the condenser unit, the cooling piece it should last you 10 to 15 years, right? I've seen the oldest one I've done to this point is 48 years old, right? Ooh. So regular maintenance. So what a lot of people will do, and a lot of companies will offer this. You get them maintenance twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. Prep for summer. Let's make sure everything's operating because we're about to put this thing on blast.
Yep.
And then prep for the winter. Make sure everything's operating on the furnace side, air handler side. But they'll service both every time they come out. They usually give you a reduced cost for 2 services. Combined, like I think ours is $350 a year, $175 a piece. They come out, they spend about an hour there. They check everything. Everything's good to go. And you can get out of your condenser unit, you can get 20, 25 years pretty easy doing that. You know what I mean? It's well worth the investment. And then your furnace, your air handler on the inside, that's because it's not dealing with the exterior weather components. That's 15 to 20 years it should last. You know what I mean? And so, but if you get it serviced, you're talking 25, 30 years. And it's just like $350 a year to not have to drop 10 grand on a new system. You know what I mean? Like, so I would definitely look at that. Yeah, so I think, those are the big things. My job is, like I said, I want to make sure that you're not going to get in this house and then have to drop an additional 5, 10, 15, 20 grand that you didn't expect. I at least want to make you aware. Now I can't cover everything. I mean, the house changes every day.
Right.
It is what it is when I'm there, and it's not what it was.
Right.
It's not what it is anymore, what it was when I was there. The minute I leave, it changes. But I can at least give you an idea, and I'm looking for clues, like I did a water heater yesterday, working perfectly fine, but it was 15 years old, and there was rust all around the bottom of it, and you could see that there was staining in the drain pan. So it had a leak at some point in time. So we know that it had a previous repair, which is automatically going to shorten the life of the system. We also know that it's rusting on the bottom. Eventually, that rust is going to creep through. So it's 15 years old. So it's like, hey, this is fully functional. The client was like, do we need to get a new water heater? And I said, I personally wouldn't get a new water heater right now. You have a drain pan that's draining to the exterior. If you have a leak, it's going to be taken care of. But just know that don't be upset if in 3 months this thing doesn't work anymore, because it is giving you all it's had. You know what I mean? So just be aware of that. But I also wouldn't, I wouldn't want a real estate agent, I wouldn't want to kill a deal because I'm asking for a new water heater that works when one already works. That's also, you've got to play the game, and that's not smart either. You don't want to not get the house you want just because of a $1,500 water heater, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and requesting repairs is always fun on our end. The one thing I was going to ask you, you said the foundation, you got to have a base foundation. But you hear a lot of people say, well, foundation movement's normal. I mean, and to an extent that is kind of true, especially out here in Central Texas with all the clay.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of foundation? I mean, does pretty much every home have some level of foundation?
Okay. I mean, it's really, that's tough to say, man. So, because it's going to depend on what kind of soil it's in, like you said. What type of foundation is it? Is it a slab on grade? Is it a post tension cable? Is it a crawl space? You know what I mean? So there's going to be different components to that. What is the drainage? The drainage can affect the foundation to an immense degree. Do you have soaker hoses there? Is it completely drying out in the summer? You have no sprinkler system. You have no soaker hoses, so it's just expanding, contracting. You're gonna get some movement in those scenarios. So yeah, I mean, every foundation's gonna move to a little degree, And is there some minor cracking at doors and windows? That's not really that big of a deal. You're gonna get it if you dry out all summer, and and then you live on the side of a hill, and then rainy season you get tons of drainage on it. The soils are going to expand when they're soaking wet. They're going to shrink when they're dry. So there's going to be some movement because that slab is 24 inches on the perimeter beam, maybe 28, maybe 32, but it's 2 feet. So everything under that is soil.
Yeah.
So if it's getting wet or it's drying out, those things can move a little bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the foundation can move as one. You know,
Right.
it's different if you have like in the center, the foundation cracks and it's heaving in the center versus the whole foundation moving as one because, you know, the soil's changing underneath it and around it. So yeah, I think you're going to see, I mean, if you're looking at a 1965 home and it's been there and it's never had a soaker hose and it's dried out, it's frozen, like, and you have little bitty cracks around the window. Yeah, I mean, so fix the cosmetic cracks. I think the foundation's probably going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if you're looking at 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch cracks, multiple ones, and what will happen a lot of times here is you might have some soil erosion, and it might just be one corner of the foundation. Like the very first house we flipped, we spent like $3,500 putting piers in on the back left corner of the house. I mean, probably would have never affected anything about the function of the house, but we knew when we went to resell it that someone was not going to buy it because it had foundation issues. You know what I mean? Even though, so we just went ahead. I think they put in 3 piers and never had a problem. When we went to sell the house, wasn't even a question. I will say though, if you're having foundation work done, make sure you have a reputable foundation contractor, because what happens is, you know, there's no licensing for foundation contractors. So businesses start and go. They may start a business. You may hire them, and 3 years later, when you're calling back on that warranty, they're not in business anymore, right? So there's 2 or 3 in town that have been in business for 20, 30, 40 years, and those are just the ones that I refer to because they're going to be here when something goes wrong and you need your foundation repaired. And all 3 of those companies, the warranties transfer with the sale, you know, as long as you communicate within a certain amount of time with the warranty company. So it's like, if you have foundation work, it has to be reputable. Do your due diligence, get 3 bids, find out how long they've been in business, because that's going to be one of the number one indicators. Because I'm not saying they're not a good company if they've been in business 3 years, but if you have a guy that you're going to hire that's 3 years in, and you have a guy that you're going to hire that's 30 years in, the chances of them honoring their warranty, the 30-year guy is your guy.
Yep, I've learned that the hard way. My first Airbnb, my second Airbnb, I went cheap on the foundation work because I was trying to save money. Company isn't around anymore, and they really weren't. It was kind of a sketchy thing. They did the foundation work in 22. 1 year later, back down, same spot.
Oh no!
Whole house. Matter of fact, it was worse. So we had to, So we're trying to figure out now as an investing group, is it worth replacing the foundation? I mean, because if we don't plan on selling the house, do we want to do the foundation or not? Mm-hmm. My concern is it going to start crushing the plumbing underneath?
Yeah.
But it's kind of in a corner there. So I've been there.
Yeah.
Learned the hard way through that. So what do you see? New builds, flips. Is there a lot of integrity in the construction field? I
will tell you, new builds. My experience with new builds, you're talking about a 2-year inspector. So right, but they've been outstanding. I love doing new builds.
Yeah.
It's a 2.5-hour inspection. There's not, you want to do an inspection where the customer feels like you didn't find anything. You know what I mean? Like that's good. So I do think on the new builds there's a lot of integrity, and I think I just think there's so many good builders, good contractors in town that they're weeding out the ones that are probably not as good, because I mean there's some really good ones. So flips are an absolutely different story. The lipstick on a pig. I went in a flip the other day that had a brand new electrical panel tied to knob and tube wiring. So knob and tube wiring is old exposed wiring. It's what it sounds like. It's got knobs on it, and they just wrap the electrical wires around it, and it runs all through the house in the crawl space or in the attic. And so basically you can touch a live wire, right? So like this was the original electrical from the 50s, maybe dates back a little, but 50s, it was used in the 50s. And so like they went to all the trouble to put a brand new panel on it.
But didn't fix it.
But didn't fix the interior. And it's like surprising that the city passed that, to be honest. They must, I don't know what.
Didn't.
Yeah, I don't know what. Maybe there were no permits were pulled. I'm not sure. So.
Well, how many, does that happen often in the construction world? Permits aren't pulled?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's my understanding from the contractor's perspective, if you're not changing the footprint of the house, you're not adding another foundation section, or you're not adding on, then a lot of guys are probably not gonna pull permits, because it might take 6 weeks to get a permit, and the people want it done in 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I learned that this was my very first flip. I didn't even know you had to pull permits. It was negligence, complete negligence. But I was redoing it, and I got a letter on the door. It said, stop the project.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then I found out, you have to pull permits for these things.
Yeah.
So I had to redo some of the work. Fortunately, it was a really good deal, so I was fine. But so I always pull permits.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend it, especially the bigger the job, whole house guts and stuff like that. I mean, you're just better off pulling permits, because you're going to get a city inspector involved. That way you can get your own third party inspection like me, but you also have a city. The more eyes you get on a project, the better. Like, there's no downside to it, and it's negligible money for the investment that you're making. Again, you're talking about maybe, through all that stuff, $1,000 that you're throwing in addition, like, to ensure that the $100,000 renovation you do is proper. Like, that's just seems like a no-brainer to me. Yeah. You don't know, like you said, you don't know if you don't know. But I'm recommending that, get your permits pulled, take the time, pay a little bit of extra money, take a little bit of extra time, and it also, the way the contractor works the permit system, or willingness to pull permits, may let you know about what type of contractor you're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
If they're like, no, we don't want to pull permits, that would be a red flag. Now, I have heard contractors say, do you want me to pull the permit? And they'll say, this is what's going to happen if I pull the permit. This is going to be the extension of the time that we have.
Right.
Versus, if I don't pull the permit, these are the downsides, but the upside is we'll get done quicker. So I've heard contractors doing that, and I think they're just being honest with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, the right way to do it is to pull a permit. We can do that. Because the job is this size and this type, we don't necessarily have to pull one, but when you go to sell it, you have permits, you show all the work has been done properly. It just helps you in the long run. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So is the inspection world, is it a small community? You mentioned earlier there's not a ton of.
Yeah, there's not a ton. Now, there's more than I originally thought, because when you're in competition, you're finding out. But I think it's a pretty small community, and like we had talked about before, I've been so impressed with the whole real estate community in Waco, from agents. Like, you hear all these horror stories as a home inspector. Like, agents are going to ask you, hey, don't mention this, or that's never happened to me. I've never had an agent wanted me to do anything but be honest about what I saw. Like, they're not trying, the seller or the buyer, they're not trying to screw anybody over. Let's just put all the cards on the table so we can all make good adult decisions. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I've never experienced that. Other inspectors in town, me being one of the newer ones in town, I've reached out to some veteran inspectors when I get stumped or I see something that maybe I've never seen before. You know what I mean? Because it's, like you were saying earlier, like, we're talking about all systems. And you're talking about systems from 1900 to systems from 2025,
Right.
And so there's no way that anyone can know all of that stuff. I don't care if you've been an inspector for 40 years. You're not going to know all that stuff. And so, so like, I've reached out to some more veteran inspectors, and they've just been absolutely gracious, wished me luck on my business, answered any questions I have. I have coffee with some of them sometimes. So, like, just... It's a good community. I feel really good about people buying houses in Waco from all aspects.
Good. Yeah, that's good to know. All right, there's a segment I do called the rapid fire segment. I say this every episode. I need to rebrand it because it's really not rapid fire. I survey people the week before, really my following on upcoming guests in the field. So I got a few questions I want to ask you.
Yes, sir.
Questions that were submitted. What should first-time homebuyers know about the inspection process and how it impacts their purchase decision?
Okay.
First-time homebuyers, because there are a lot of people that have no idea even what your role is and what you do.
Yeah. So, oh man, that's a good one. First of all, you want to get a reputable inspector. You know what I mean? Again, I encourage you to always do your due diligence when you're looking for an inspector. Whether you call 2, 3, 5, that's your choice. Don't let price be the indicator. If they're $25 more, don't let that be the reason you don't hire an inspector. Like, it's $25. Like, that's not relevant to the equation, in my opinion.
Do you recommend buyers finding their own, or should they rely on a recommendation from their realtor?
Okay, so I would say first and foremost, if you get a recommendation from a friend in your community, then I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, and I will tell you, in my first full fiscal year of business, I did 272 inspections, and I would estimate that 100 of those inspections were from community friend referrals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The rest were from agents, obviously. But so yeah, getting a recommendation from a friend that has been through an inspection with someone. I mean, that's your go-to right there, right? Agents, if you're hiring the agent, I'm assuming that you've done your due diligence in finding an agent, right?
Good point.
So they should be a trustworthy person, and they're going to give you a list of 3 to 5, and they're going to be people that they've used before and that they trust, right? Or they wouldn't put them on the list because they can't look bad by having these people on their list, right? So I do think the list that your realtor gives you is a good place. It's a great place to start, right? So look at that list, but call them, ask them a few questions. Tell them you're a first-time home buyer, right? What kind of response do you get? If you call me and tell you a first-time home buyer, the first thing I'm going to do is, all right, man, what questions do you have?
Yeah.
What do you want to know from me? Because I know this experience is overwhelming. So what do you want to know from me? And if the inspector's going to gauge you on the front end before he even has your business, engage you on the front end before he has your business, that's the kind of guy that's going to take the time to figure stuff out,
Yep.
Because I might say something like, do you already have some concerns? You've seen the house, what are you talking about here? What are we worried about,
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, we saw this, we saw that. And I'm like, okay, that indicates this, or that's not really that big of a deal, but I'm going to check it out when I get there. You know what I mean? So call the inspector and don't say how much. I mean, ask them how much, of course. Yeah, like if you're expecting to pay $500 and they say it's $750, okay, that's a different story. But if you call this guy and he engages you and the price is $475, and then you call the next guy and you're like, I'm a first-time home buyer, I'm really nervous, and he's like, oh, the price is $450, $25 cheaper, and that's the end of the conversation, I'm going to pay the $25 and go with the guy that engaged me, right? Because he knows, you're telling him, you're saying, I'm vulnerable, I'm a first-time home buyer, I don't have any idea what I'm doing, I need additional guidance, right? So have a conversation, I think I don't know. Again, you get me back into my strength conditioning world, but like we've become so comfortable and in turn lazy. Like we're not inspecting the house ourselves. We're not, we're the agents doing this for us, the home inspectors. The least you can do is engage these people and ask them really good questions.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's the very least you can do for the biggest purchase of your life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Your job is to inform that buyer all the potential concerns in the biggest purchase of their life.
Yeah.
And
just inform, not direct.
Just inform.
Like I'm going to observe and I'm going to report.
Right.
I'm gonna take a picture of everything that I find that looks, even if it's not wrong, but it looks wrong. It might need to be a defect, but it'll be an informational comment.
Yeah.
Hey, I noticed this and this. I can't tell you what it's from, but it's something that I would be aware of going into the purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We actually hit on a few of these. This is a good one. What are the most costly repairs that could come up during the inspection, and how should buyers budget for potential repair concerns?
Okay. The most costly is going to be foundation and roof right off the top. I mean, so yeah.
Okay.
Those are going to be the most costly, and then you start to get into your, like I said, those systems, your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. So like those are your big 5, but the most expensive foundation is going to be the most expensive most of the time, and then you work your way back from there. What was the second half of the question?
Well, how should somebody who, for the first time, or maybe it's just been a while, they're buying a home, a lot of people don't understand. I think a lot of this is on the realtor. They've got to kind of educate their clients on this, which I do with all of mine. Look, here's what your lender is going to take care of what you're putting down, but you got to understand there could be some things that pop up during the inspection, and be prepared. We're going to negotiate. We're going to try our best, but you got to understand. You got to have some sort of if there's some stuff that pops up, are you going to be able to make those repairs or be cool with moving forward without any repairs? So my question was, if you had to say how much somebody should budget for repairs, what do you think is
I mean, it's hard without knowing the house. I mean, every circumstance is going to be different. You may have a 10-year-old house with a failing HVAC system, you know what I mean? Or you may have a 10-year-old house with the HVAC system that's been serviced twice a year, every year for 10 years, and the sucker looks like brand new. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to say without having the particular circumstance in front of me. What I would say is when you get the inspection report, the inspector is usually going to label something a safety hazard, a defect, or informational, right? So those top ones, those safety hazards and things like that, like those things need to be repaired. And most likely you as the agent are going to say, hey, these are non-negotiables. They've got to be repaired or we can't move into the house with something that's going to be a potential safety hazard. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like something like no smoke alarms. Like come on, that's on the seller. Like you can't sell a house that's not safe. So, take care of those. But what I would say is, ask your inspector, and I do this for a lot of people. Like they'll say, like, what are your top 3 concerns for me? And I'm like, are we talking safety? Are we talking finance? You know what I mean? And you say finance, I'm going to say, well, it's this, this, and this. And this is what I would address. These are the 3 that I would address initially. So call that electrician. If it is an electrical panel and the inspector recommends an electrician to come out there and see it, call the electrician. If they're going to charge you to come out, see if they'll take a look at the inspection report online and not come out and not charge you, but give you an estimate. It won't be a quote that you can't hold them liable for it, but they can say, hey, based on what your inspector's telling me, it would cost me this much to do it. Like, so do some legwork yourself. Don't rely on everybody else. Take your inspector is just giving you as much information as possible, but it's nothing for you to call and say, hey, what are your top 3 things that you would be concerned about from this home? Well, it's electrical, it's the HVAC system is on its last leg. There's rust on the coils. Like it's going to need to be replaced, So let's get those technicians out there. And like I said, most of the places, if you'll send them the portion of my report that pertains to that particular system, they'll give you an estimate based on that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
because I think this is important for people that haven't dealt with an inspector, you're not allowed to give an idea of a cost associated or recommend somebody to fix that problem. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, but also because I could be negligent. I am not a journeyman plumber. I am not a journeyman electrician. There's no way one person could be all of these things.
Right.
I'm a generalist, and I've been taught to look for indicators of failure, right? So, like, I can't necessarily tell you what's wrong, but I can tell you that, like, if I open an air handler and there's moisture in the air handler and there's rust on the coils, well, that system is producing too much moisture. It could be that the drainage system is backed up. It could be that the system is too big for the house, and so it's not running efficiently. Like, it could be any of those things. It's not my job to detect that. It's my job to say there's an indicator of potential failure here. Let's get a professional out there. Do your due diligence and get the professional out there. Or just call them and send them the report so they can look at it. You know what I mean? But, again, biggest investment of your life, put in some legwork. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, hire a good inspector. Obviously, you're going to hire a good real estate agent. Let them be your resources, but you're going to have to do some of the legwork. Now, you might say, well, I'm new to Waco. I don't know anybody. Okay. Ask me who the electrician is that I would recommend. I'll give you 3 names of an electrician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll probably recommend people that are going to look at the report and give you a quote based on that. Because I know that that's going to be easier for them. It's going to be easier for you, and we're all in communication. You know what I mean? So, and that's the thing. And like, I'm not going to recommend personally, and you wouldn't either as an agent, recommend someone that I don't trust, that I know is not going to do a good job. Like, I have a plumber that I use all the time, especially for sewer scopes. He's not going to be the cheapest. He's also not going to be the most expensive, but he's not going to be the cheapest. But I guarantee you're going to get every dollar you pay for in service and product.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get more. And almost always you're going to get more. But at the very least, you're going to be even money on whatever you spend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just is. And I know sometimes we try to save $100 here and there. I'm just at the point in my life where I would just rather pay for the most quality service I can get. And if it costs me an extra $100, then he's got to feed his family. He's not charging me that because he's trying to get rich. If he was trying to get rich, he'd probably be doing something else.
Yeah.
He's charging me that because that's what it costs for him to run his business at the level he does and provide for his family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Jeremy, where can people find more information about you?
Okay. Heffner Home Inspections with an S.com is my website.
Okay.
I am on Instagram at Heffner Home Inspections, and at Grateful_Heffner is my personal page. I've had it longer. I have more followers, so I mostly post from there and tag my business. And then Heffner Home Inspections on Facebook as well.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the education. I'm glad you came on.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to meet you in person. I know one of our really good buddies, one of your best friend. I don't know if he's too young for me to call him my best friend. So, but yeah, it's good to meet you, and I know lots of your family. So your family's kind of Waco legendary. So
yeah. He's eerily resembles you, Thomas.
Okay.
Y'all have spent too much time around each other.
Yeah. No, we did. We spent a lot of time. I mean, and we talk. We still stay in touch very regularly, and I did for Kim Mulkey what he's been doing for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And so I mean we just you got to commiserate together occasionally. It's tough out there,
especially working for Kim.
She doesn't let up, and that's why she wins national championships.
That's
on
exactly
a regular
why.
basis.
Exactly.
She's one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sport.
Period. She is. So I'll put all your information in the caption. You guys, if you need a home inspection, great recommendation right here. Hopefully that was educational. Jeremy, I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Wesley.
Cool.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man.